Hello and welcome to 9 Inch Charge. Welcome to the Old World Show and welcome Tom.
Hello.
Today we're going to talk about the Border Princes. There's been a brand new article up on the Warhammer community website and it's really exciting. The map has gotten bigger. There's all new kinds of different weird and wonderful factions who might live in the Border Princes region, plus another little bonus that I think Tom is going to talk to us about later on. Something that I might be painting up already, which is nice. Just before we get on into the article itself, please be sure to drop this video a like if you enjoy it. And if you've been watching the series so far and you like it and you're not yet subscribed, please consider subscribing to the channel. We've got plenty more in store. So let's get into the article, Tom. So the article is called Discover Warhammer the Old World's Ultimate Getaway for Exiled Lords and Rotten Princes. So the Border Princes is a vast region within the Old World, located between the Black Mountains and Blackfire Pass to the north and the shores of the Black Gulf to the south. This region of vast wilderness is home to a multitude of petty human kingdoms that were established by highly ambitious adventurers who sought to create a realm for their own. Many times, however, these adventurers usually consist of political or religious refugees from lands such as the Empire, Bretonnia, and Kislev. Now, the article itself did give us a little bit of flavor text just to expand on that. They say that the Border Princes is a rugged, largely arid region occupying a crossroads between various nations and factions of the Old World. It's an area well used to the tread of invading armies passing through in all directions, and as such is claimed by no one nation. Instead, it's a patchwork of petty kingdoms. Each is ruled over for a brief period by a leader charismatic or despotic enough to claim the territory temporarily before being knocked off their throne within a year or two by the next rival. Exiled nobles and fallen warlords come to the Border Princes from far and wide to set themselves up as rulers, gathering any waifs and strays that flock to their tattered banners.
That sounds real interesting. That sounds like a real creative hot pot you've got going on there. Like if you wanted to get your hobby on, you're going to do some Border Prince shenanigans.
I think the article does say that it's been around since about 3rd edition, and it was originally created to provide a sandbox in which players could set their own campaigns and stories. So they've done it over. They didn't want to go into too much detail, and they've put some sort of kingdoms in there that will be there, temporarily, as it said, for like a year or two, something like that, just to give you a bit of flavour of what it's like. But as you said, for someone who's an avid hobbyist or someone who's got their own kind of ideas or wants to set up their own narrative for their particular force, that's the place, isn't it?
Yeah. They've got good history of doing this as well. They did it in the Horus Heresy. They had black flags. So these just like rebel units or units from all different legions getting together and fighting as a cohesive force. So they've got some really good history behind doing a good rule set for that.
So how does that play out in the game on the tape? How does that appear in the rule set or something like that?
So you build your army, and then you can pick like special rules to go on top of it, and like a special rule will exclude other special rules, so you can't do stuff that's too overpowered. Because it was a 40k base game in the Horus Heresy, it was more Force Org based. So if you took a particular Force Org or Force Organization chart, it would tie you into a certain set of rules and how to play it. So you might have a lot more assault units, jump packs, chainswords. So you may have a lot more knights and cavalry in the Old World, or a lot more infantry, a lot more handguns. Depends on how they decide to go with it. Or a lot of religious fanatics running around with flails or maces.
So I guess what it would do then is allow you to kind of come up with your own paint scheme, come up with your own backstory, and then tailor the way your army fights with its rules to how you see that your own narrative go.
Yeah, absolutely. So the best thing
was that only narrative play, or was that matched play as well?
Well, in Horus Heresy, there's no like narrative match, any of that. So you could people allowed it in the narrative campaigns. You'd always have like I called it black flags earlier. It's black shields. You'd allow black shields to come along, and people who wanted to create their own little narrative, or they read a small little story. There's like a part of a story they read in one of the many novellas that there are, and they just leached onto it and really gone for for showing that off. So I think there's a lot they could do with that.
That sounds really, really cool, to be honest, especially, we're gamers who really enjoy the narrative and the story and getting involved in our forces, not just playing the game on the tabletop, but creating a bit of flavor text and thinking about, what their agendas might be and things like that. That sounds great. And there are actually loads of interesting ones that already exist. There, as it says, these border prince kingdoms kind of come and go, and people set themselves up, and there are kingdoms within the border princes where, when they negotiate with each other, they talk about international diplomacy because they feel that they are actually nations. My favorite is New Britonia, which was a realm founded by an exiled Bretonian noblewoman called Duoda, and she just decided she was going to set up New Britonia, which I think is quite cool. There's all sorts of other ones. There was one called Lisa, named after Mona Lisa, who was a woman from the Empire. No, I think she was from Talia, actually. But so there's all these really cool things, and there's loads of really interesting characters there as well, different ones. My favorite, I think, was Count Schuvaltz, who was a border prince way after the game is set. For the old world, a couple hundred years after. But he was in need of money and resources to raise an army. And he thought what he'd do was he'd go and plunder Kemri and take all their gold, and then he'd be able to raise his army that he needed. So he raised a smaller army with the idea of using them to get money to raise a bigger army. They went to Kemri, and one survivor returned, and that was him done. And then someone else would come in because he had no army. And I think that's just, this kind of shifting is really cool. And it's the way this map looks. It would be cool as if they did successive editions of the old world. So we're anticipating the first edition. If they did the second edition, it'd be cool to see that map just completely gone and changed again.
That would be nice. Yeah, that would be brilliant. I was just thinking back to Warhammer Fantasy. They did a Mortals Empire campaign. Like, what better setting to do a Mortals Empire campaign than the Border Princes for yourself? That would be amazing. Because you get all the little tiles still, you can actually set it up, and you've got a nice map with a lot of detail in now. So you can really go to town on something like that.
Yeah, there's plenty of detail on the map, and also the kingdoms are quite clear. You can see what they are, who owns them, and have a think about where they might be from. So why don't we just go through some of them?
Let's do it.
So there's one there. I don't know if you can see it, Tom. It's got like a fleur de lis and a dragon on, and the name of the guy is Gaston. And for me, you couldn't get a more Bretonian sounding name than that. And the font is the same as a Bretonian font. So maybe he's like a New Britonia kind of person.
Yeah, he could be. Could be off to go slay a beast in a massive castle with a name like Gaston.
Yeah. But there are some more interesting names on there. There's, I can't even pronounce this, Uvatovsk, I think. Is that how you'd say that? Which is the white bear.
Yeah.
So that looks like Kislev.
Does indeed.
Which would be interesting to see. Someone who got fed up of the cold, I think, and just like marched south.
Yeah.
And set up. But it'd be interesting to know all the backstories of all these people and why they ended up there. But there's another one there who is called Ortageta, and that to me sounds, it's got a bit of an Italian, not Italian, a sort of kind of Spanish flavor to it, which makes me think that might be Esralia, which which is kind of geographically located where Spain would be, and Esralia itself is not one unified nation. It's all different little kingdoms as well. So maybe he just got barged out of Esralia, you know, someone else come and took his kingdom. So then he went over to the border princes and kicked someone out of theirs, you know. There's all this stuff that could be going on that's really interesting. And Esralia is somewhere that I don't really know a lot about, to be honest. It was never mentioned too much. I think they are fighting a war against Araby and they're invaded by them, but they're not a unified kingdom, so it must be quite easy to knock them over. And then maybe that's why I ended up there. I don't know. The most interesting one to me on that map, if I just bring it up again, is Gordano, and that for me has got kind of feels a bit Italian to it. So I'm going to say that he's probably from Tilia. Tilia being geographically located similar to where Italy is, but Tilia is where all the dogs of war are from.
Oh, sweet. That's very interesting.
So that's why before we started the stream, we were having a chat about the birdmen of Catraza and things like that.
Yeah. The dogs of war models are absolutely phenomenal, especially those birdmen.
Yeah, they're just really interesting and really cool, and I like that they've got a little sort of historical twist to them, like the birdmen of Catraza, or if you don't know the models, I'll put a picture up. They're all wearing on their backs like the Leonardo da Vinci flying machine, and they're sharpshooters. But maybe that's how this Gordano got over there. Maybe he flew over on the back of a sort of winged flying machine, and went over and set up his kingdom. But imagine seeing something like that come back to the game. You know, it just opens a door, doesn't it, to something really incredible.
Yeah.
I always used to think of the Tilians and the Dogs of War as being like Giovanni, goodness me, what was it? Justiniani, who was a mercenary who helped the Byzantines in the siege of Constantinople against the Ottomans, and he was a sort of larger than life figure who led these Genoese mercenaries, and they were really phenomenal in the siege. Actually, they go out and like break out of the walls and go out and take the fight to the Ottomans, and they could go toe to toe with Janissaries or anybody. And then at the end of the siege, when it wasn't going his way and it looked like Constantinople was going to fall, he took a bit of a knock and then he just ran away and just fled. And I think but like all the way through, like he would have, if he'd have died earlier on, he would have been remembered as this great hero. But actually, you know, in the end, it
run away.
But that's what I always used to think of the Dogs of War. They're like sellswords, and they'll come out and they'll be these amazing fighters. But actually, their loyalties don't really lie with you, and if the going gets tough, you know, they're off. And they're from the same kind of place. So I thought maybe there was some kind of relation there, but I don't know. Maybe there is, maybe there isn't. But I can remember the Dogs of War, and I have a feeling that it was a Dogs of War unit that had pikes.
I think there was, or it might be a Regiment of Renowned Empire unit.
No, I think it was a Regiment of Renowned. Yeah, that's true. I was just trying to think because I can remember as a Wood Elf player, I always used to play against my friend Wayne's Bretonians, and I could never find a way to undo the cavalry charges. So I got the pikemen, and then that way I could stand a charge. But that's something else, you know. If there are Dogs of War and there are these border princes, maybe they are up to, you know, being sellswords and things like that. The border princes are famous for piracy, being cutthroats, being sellswords, mercenaries. You know, they think of themselves as these kingdoms, but actually they're also, you know, up for a quick buck, and they're a bit shady.
Yeah. And there's plenty of bucks to be made out there. So I think I think you'll see it. I'm really hoping that's how they bring it in, like old school Dogs of War, or, you know, a couple regiments of renown. It'd be very nice, very interesting.
Yeah, I think that's probably second on my list. First is exactly what you said for the Horus Heresy. I'd love to see that kind of narrative, make your own force. It's something that I've wanted in Age of Sigmar with Cities of Sigmar. I want to make my own city. I want to do things, you know, have a narrative and drive it my way. And if they enabled you to do that within these human factions, it would just be really cool. So the last the last emblem or shield that they've got here that I want to talk about is Harkon, who's in the north, and that is really interesting.
It's very interesting. That's our first look at some vampires, is it not?
Yeah, and Harkon was famous for. Oh no, let me get this right, because there was a legion of Bretonnian knights that guarded the border, just kind of where that is, and they were called the Order of the Blood Dragon. And Harkon came to that area and just slayed all of them, and then the ones who he preferred or he thought were, particularly brave, whatever, he reanimated or turned them into vampires, and the other people he turned into, zombies and skeletons and mindless legions. And then he ran, or was the Grand Master of the greatest order of blood knights ever seen, and they were the Blood Dragons.
Yeah.
And Harkon himself is a really interesting character because he still does knightly things and knightly orders, and he does these kind of mimicry of different knightly ceremonies and things like that. So he's a little bit different to your traditional vampires, a little bit more knightly, I suppose. But he still doesn't necessarily have the honor. You wouldn't want to cross it.
Well, I think in that story, doesn't he challenge them all to single combat as well? So, like, you don't go around challenging Bretonnians to single combat, especially not knights. Those guys are badass. Those guys will mess you up. That's what they do. They do challenges, they do single combat, and he's just going around slaying people like it's nothing.
Yeah. So yeah, that's so cool. So yeah, you remind me, Tom. That's exactly what happened. Yeah, he challenged them all, and then one by one he fought them, and then those who were worthy he turned into vampires, and the rest he just turned into undead. So not only did he kill them all, he deemed many of them unworthy to join him as vampires as well. And we're talking about the best of the best.
Yeah, like Bretonnian knights train from like the minute they can hold a sword to fight.
Yeah. So that would be really cool. And as you said, our first kind of look at vampires, because the Empire is at a stage at the moment in the timeline where they've had their war with the von Carsteins, and that's all kind of settled and done with. And there isn't a massive threat on the horizon, straight away. And we know we're working up to the Great War against Chaos, but at the moment the vampires are kind of more subdued. So it's great to see that Harkon is there. Doing his thing. It makes you worried for the other border princes, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
And the last thing was something that you spied on the map, Tom, wasn't it?
Yeah. So I think this has been pointed out quite a bit, but down in the Dragonback Mountains, you look all the way down by the Badlands. Yeah, there is a little scarab and a temple. So I think, without too much speculation, that is the first Tomb King symbol we see on a map. I don't want to say Tomb King's confirmed.
That's such a good feeling for me, because I am absolutely. I don't know if I can show you, but I've got like these are my bases that I've got, desert bases, and I've got loads of undead spearmen, and I've got a canopic sorcerer that I've painted up.
Oh yeah.
So I am fully like on my way to doing Tomb Kings. I just really fancy painting them. I just wanted to paint some gold and some yellows and some blues, and I wanted to do something old world that I hadn't done previously. And now that symbol's come along, and it's just like, it's just so good. I'm going to be able to play with this army in the new game, all being well, and it'll be great, because you don't want to make something for nothing. Obviously, you could proxy them with some other undead or something, but it'll be great to just have that. So yeah, thank you very much, Games Workshop. And I know there's a lot of people who have been asking for this. It feels like every time we go to Warhammer Fest and there's a seminar, someone's like, when are Bretonians coming back? Or
Yeah,
when are
when are
Tomb
Tomb
Kings coming back?
Kings? Yeah.
And so it's a question a lot of people asked, and I'm surprised they didn't make a bigger deal of it, to be honest, like they did with the Bretonians when they were like, boom, Bretonia's back. I'm surprised it's just only a little tiny tease.
Yeah, I think so. In Warhammer Total War 2, there is a legendary hero. I can't think about who it is, who starts in that location, but it's a bit of a nothing. So I think when they explore Camry a bit more, they might be like, oh, we've given you the little nugget, so let's give you the whole shebang next.
Be nice to see. Obviously, we don't know how far they're going to go. You know, there's so much, as we've seen, to explore just within, you know, this little section that we call the old world. But the Warhammer world is much bigger than just that area. And you know, as we said, you know, we've now been thinking about Esralia and Tilia and these other nations of Cathay and things. So, you know, you do kind of wonder how much they're going to do. But if this is something that they do bring back, you know, I know a lot of people will be really happy about that.
Yeah, it's insane. Like, just think about it. In the few posts we've had most of the Empire, where there's like Chaos Dwarves, there's Kislev, there's Empire, there's now vampires. We've got Wood Elves, Bretonians. We've got the Dwarfs. We've got Kaza as well. I can't pronounce the name. It's gone. We've got
Hobgoblins. Do you say Hobgoblins? Chaos Dwarves.
Chaos Dwarves. Norse Dwarves. It's insane. And it's just a few little posts we've had. We've had like no massive information leaks or dumps or anything like that. It's just like, here's a little bit of a map, and there's so much going on.
Just goes to show how rich and how wonderful this world really is. I think that's everything that we were going to talk about today.
Yeah, I think so.
Just, you know, just speculating and just chatting old world based off this article. So that's everything. Thank you very much for watching, everybody who's made it all the way to the end.
Thank you very much.
And we will catch you next time.
Catch you on the flip side.